Ever find yourself wondering how some apps manage to handle information in real time?
Like ride-sharing services
Mm.
or those stock trading platforms.
Yeah, exactly. It all boils down to this really cool but kind of complex world of asynchronous programming and what they call event-driven architectures. We've got a mountain of articles and notes on this, and today we're diving deep into a talk by Dale Lane.
Oh, yeah, I've seen his stuff. He's an expert in event automation over at IBM.
Right. He presented at APIDays.HK 2023, and it's all about taking control of these asynchronous systems. We're talking security, how to scale them up, the whole 9 yards.
You hit the nail on the head. These systems are becoming mission critical, especially for apps that need to be super responsive in real time.
Like instant messaging, live dashboards, even self-driving cars, all that cool stuff.
Exactly. And to understand how to manage these beasts, Dale kicks things off with some good old API management basics.
Now I know what you might be thinking. API management, isn't that a little old school?
Yeah, I get it.
But stick with us here, because this foundation is crucial. Dale talks about this concept of an API gateway. It's like a gatekeeper between your back-end servers and the apps that want to use them.
Kind of like a bouncer at a club.
Huh? Yeah, you could say that. A very efficient bouncer at a very exclusive club. The API gateway makes sure requests go to the right place. It handles security, making sure only the apps that are supposed to get through actually get through.
It's not just about who gets in, though, right?
Right. It's not just access control. The API gateway can also do things like translate data, like reformatting old responses.
Oh, okay, I see.
It can even filter out sensitive information that shouldn't be shared. Pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, pretty sophisticated for a bouncer.
But even the best bouncer needs a manager, and that's where the API manager comes in. Think of it like a central control panel for your APIs. API owners can document their APIs, manage their lifecycle, set who has access, and even see how they're being used.
Ah, so it's about keeping things running smoothly.
Exactly. They can even revoke access if things go south. Keeps everything nice and tidy.
It's amazing how these seemingly traditional concepts are super relevant in this world of asynchronous events.
Right.
It's not about managing requests and responses anymore. It's about managing the flow of information as it happens.
Think about it. We have all these event-driven applications constantly sending out messages and events. They do this through these specialized channels called queues and topics.
And these are provided by message brokers like ActiveMQ.
Yeah, ActiveMQ, or even streaming platforms like Apache Kafka.
Ah, Kafka. That's a popular one these days.
It is. It's like a super efficient postal service for your applications. Handles a ton of messages, makes sure they get where they need to go. But just like with any postal service, things can get a bit messy without good management.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's where Dale introduces this idea of an event gateway.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It essentially does what the API gateway does, but for asynchronous events. It decouples applications from those back-end brokers. It makes sure traffic goes to the right queues and topics, and of course, keeps everything secure.
The decoupling part sounds important. Why is that so crucial?
Well, it lets your systems evolve independently. Say you need to upgrade your message broker or even switch to a whole new platform. With an event gateway in place, your applications don't even need to know about the change. It handles the transition smoothly, gives you more flexibility and less disruption.
That's slick. It's like having someone handle all the complicated stuff behind the scenes so you can focus on building your app.
Right. So we have API managers for those traditional APIs. Makes sense to have something similar for managing event endpoints, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, with topics and messages flying around everywhere, having a central place to document them, control who has access, and track their usage seems pretty essential. And Dale agrees. He argues for having a developer portal specifically designed for events.
Yes.
This way, developers can easily find out what event streams are available, figure out their purpose, and even sign up for access without all the red tape. Fosters a culture of self-service and, encourages innovation.
I like it. Gives teams more freedom to experiment and build those event-driven solutions faster.
Exactly. But as with anything worthwhile, there are some challenges with managing events. Dale brought up a few in his talk that really got me thinking.
Like what?
Well, documentation, for starters. It's crucial for APIs, right? Developers can't use event streams effectively if they don't know what those events mean, what kind of data they hold, how to interpret them. But how do you document something that's always changing and asynchronous?
Yeah, especially on complex platforms like Kafka. That can be a real head-scratcher.
Right. It's like trying to document a moving target. How do we make sense of that?
A good question. We need to find a way to capture that dynamic nature of events in a way that makes sense to developers.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, Dale had some interesting ideas about that, and I'm curious to hear your take on it too. So Dale talked about this thing called Async API. It's basically like Open API, but specifically for asynchronous endpoints. Async API gives you this standardized way to describe event streams. It's clear, consistent, no matter what tech is running underneath.
So you're saying that even if I don't know the ins and outs of Kafka or whatever, I can still understand what's going on with the events?
Exactly. Think of it like a universal translator for your event streams. Everyone can speak the same language, regardless of their background.
That's a pretty elegant solution. So we've got a way to document these complex event streams, which is fantastic. But what about all that talk of self-service sign-up? We want developers to experiment with different event streams, but doesn't that open up a can of worms when it comes to security?
That's the million-dollar question. How do you balance that need for developer freedom with the need for security and control? Especially in this asynchronous world, right?
Exactly. It's a tightrope walk, for sure.
And that's where things get even more interesting. To answer that, we got to dig a little deeper into the technical nitty-gritty of event management. We've talked about gateways and API managers, but there's another layer of complexity here.
Okay, lay it on me. What are we missing?
Let's rewind back to that self-service sign-up idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great concept, giving developers easy access to event streams. But if your event gateway isn't protocol-aware, things can go south really fast.
Wait, protocol aware, what does that even mean when we're talking about events?
Remember our super efficient postal service analogy for Kafka?
Yeah, it is a good one.
Imagine if the postal workers had no clue about the different types of mail. You got letters, packages, express deliveries, and they're just shoving everything into random mailboxes.
No, I see where you're going with this. Total chaos.
Yeah.
So a protocol-aware event gateway, it understands all the nuances of how these event streams actually work, like the specific rules of Kafka, right? To avoid those kinds of mix-ups.
You got it. Let me give you a real-world example. Dale talked about this in his presentation. Imagine a company that relies on real-time data for, let's say, stock trading.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. Without a protocol-aware event gateway, they could miss critical market updates because of a simple misconfiguration.
Oof, I'd hate to be the one responsible for that.
We're talking potentially huge financial losses here.
So it's not just about convenience, it's about avoiding potential disaster.
Absolutely.
Can you give me an example of how this protocol awareness actually works in practice?
Sure. Dale talked about Kafka's consumer groups. It's like different departments in a company, each responsible for processing specific types of information. A naive event gateway, it might accidentally assign multiple applications to the same consumer group, even if they're meant to handle completely different tasks.
So, like sending all the financial reports to the marketing team, that wouldn't end well.
You got it. And in a real-time system, that kind of mix-up could be disastrous. But a protocol-aware event gateway, it knows how to set up those consumer groups properly. Make sure that each application gets the right information. It's like a skilled receptionist directing every piece of mail to the correct department.
Okay, now that makes sense. So protocol awareness is crucial for preventing those catastrophic mix-ups. But Dale also mentioned something about protocol-level rewriting. What's that all about?
That's where it gets really cool. And it all ties back to that idea of decoupling we talked about earlier. Imagine you're that stock trading company again, and you need to scale up your Kafka infrastructure, maybe moving from a single cluster to multiple clusters for better performance.
I'm guessing that's not as simple as just telling everyone to switch to the new address, right?
With a simple proxy, you'd have to update all your applications to point to the new brokers. It'd be a logistical nightmare.
Sounds like a headache and a half.
But with protocol-level rewriting, your event gateway steps in like a brilliant middleman. It intercepts messages from applications, rewrites the destination address to point to the new clusters, and then sends them on their way.
So my applications are completely oblivious to this massive infrastructure change happening behind the scenes.
Exactly. They're blissfully unaware. And that's the power of it. You get all the benefits of a flexible, scalable infrastructure without having to disrupt your application development.
That's amazing. It's like having that personal assistant who handles all the complicated logistics so you can stay focused on what matters most.
Yeah.
Building great applications.
You nailed it. And that's what really sets a protocol-aware event gateway apart from a simple proxy. It's not just about routing traffic. It's about understanding the language of event streams and using that knowledge to manage them intelligently.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. API gateways, event gateways, protocol awareness, rewriting. My head's spinning. But I think I'm starting to see the big picture. It's not just about slapping the word event onto existing API management tools. It's about recognizing that the world of events is different, requires a different way of thinking.
You're absolutely right. We're shifting from this world of neat requests and responses to a world where information flows constantly and asynchronously. And as we embrace this new reality, the tools and techniques for managing this flow, they become even more critical.
So if we think about the future of event-driven architectures, where do we go from here? So we've talked a lot about how to manage event streams that, already exist. But what if we design them from the start with these ideas in mind? How would that change how we build applications?
That's a really interesting question, and it's kind of the challenge that Dale leaves us with. If we shift our thinking to include API management for events from the very beginning, it could fundamentally change how we approach building these applications.
So instead of just focusing on the technical details of how to make the events flow, we start thinking about, like, discoverability. How easy is it for other teams to find and understand my event streams?
Exactly.
And how can I make them easy to use without causing security headaches? It's almost like we need to think of events as, like, products themselves.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about treating events like valuable assets, not just these technical side effects. If we bake API management principles into the design phase, we can create event-driven architectures that are more robust, scalable, and just more valuable overall.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's say I'm a developer and I'm just starting to explore this whole event-driven thing. What's the one key takeaway I should remember about API management for events?
It's not just a nice-to-have anymore, it's quickly becoming essential. As event-driven architectures become more and more popular, the tools and techniques to manage them will keep evolving. And staying ahead of the curve, well, that'll give you a big advantage.
This deep dive has been a whirlwind of information. We've gone through some pretty complex concepts, but I think we managed to unpack quite a bit. From API gateways to event gateways and that crucial idea of protocol awareness, we've explored how to manage events effectively.
And we only just scratched the surface. It's a really exciting time to be working in this field. As we move towards those real-time, super responsive applications, managing events well, it's only going to get more and more important.
So to our listeners out there, keep exploring this world, keep learning, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep diving deep into the fascinating world of event-driven architectures.